present, including our two newest members, Oren Siegel and Julie Oakley. Welcome, I guess, formally at our first business meeting. Our agenda is fairly light, but this is our first meeting without a planner, so we are struggling with a few housekeeping things, not the least of which we were locked out of the office, and we don't have nameplates. So we know who we are, but unfortunately, you may not know us all. Just for the sake of members, Mike Units, the town manager, is interviewing folks this week, candidates. He had shared with me 8 applications.
Wow.
He may or may not have gotten more.
Yeah.
We, as you know, we are funded for, in essence, a town planner and 2 part-time folks and a recording secretary. We have none, other than the 1 part-time clerk who's brand new. Steve met with her this morning. I had tried reaching out to her and coming out to see her Thursday and Friday, but she had an illness in the family, so hopefully that's resolved itself. So I'd ask both members and anyone in the audience, the TV audience who may be in need of business with the planning board, to be patient. We'll try to do the right thing, but at this point, at least I, for one, am not always aware what the procedurally the right thing is, but we'll get through this until we have staff. So as a consequence, on the agenda are planning board business and policies. I just touched on a little bit of that. Bills and warrants, don't know what we have and where they are until we speak with Carol. Approval of minutes, the last notification that Tabitha sent out was she was working on some, but I haven't seen them.
I have not seen any either, no.
So we'll have to track those down. Beyond that, I've got to do a bit of a T-bird shuffle here. I and my family are on the agenda, and that's, at this point, the only item that we have. Before getting to that, I did get a couple of, I was copied, and I think, Steve, you were as well, emails from Mark Dibb, who is working on the Leonard Street project. I'm not sure exactly what it is that he is in need of in terms of action by the planning board in the short term. So he was trying to get on the agenda for our next meeting, which I think is August 7th. But if it's a special permit, again, don't know what he's looking for. That requires newspaper advertisements and notices that we can't meet in terms of timeline. If there's something else, then obviously I want to see that he's on and his needs are addressed. But that's the only thing, if you will, in the pipeline that I'm aware of.
I know when we talked about having maybe a joint listing session with the Conservation Commission, which I think would be helpful.
Yep.
I know in the filing that Condyne submitted, which I think was distributed around, Condyne stated that they're looking to start construction in September. So I'm guessing that he is looking for special permits in relatively short order.
Yeah, I know one of his questions, Joe, was, to that end, there was, the first 5 buildings all be on one set of plans. He was looking to, at least discuss the go-forward process, 1 special permit, 5 special permits, things of that nature, to the extent that, we can answer some of that. And I know you reached out to him to kind of have a discussion, so.
Yeah, before she left, I asked Tabitha if there had been any progress on setting up a joint meeting, and hadn't heard, so when I say joint meeting with the Conservation Commission, I still think that's something that would be useful. And I'm only, as a member, and granted the longest serving member, nevertheless, it's one thing to function as a planning board member from the 30,000-foot level. You're not dealing with the detail. In the absence of someone, I'm trying to figure out, okay, literally, someone walks in with a plan, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Who gets copies? and trying to see what, and anticipate what Condyne may be needing. There is a preliminary, I believe it's called a preliminary site plan that has to be submitted. That does not require public notice, but the ultimate site plan does. And I don't know a way around ultimately doing a special permit for every building over 10,000 square feet. If he, and again, I suggested that he actually call me, I left
Right.
my cell phone number so we can have rather than catch up on emails back and forth, just have the discussion. If he's just looking for the preliminary, we can set that up for the 7th. And go from there. But if he's looking for anything more definitive, there are legal processes that he's probably more aware of than I am. So that's why I really want to have the conversation. But nevertheless, that's where we're at. I don't know of anything else. Tabitha had mentioned something about a possible cluster, I think off of Dean Street. But again, haven't seen anything on that.
Yeah, were you guys able to meet when we, at the last meeting? You were gonna, and Steve, you were gonna meet with her to kind of just go through some of, how things flow and what she does and where things are type of stuff. But hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, she's very organized, so, I mean, anything that was being worked on or in the process of it, I'm sure will be easy enough to find on the
Yeah.
system. It's just like Joe said, somebody comes in,
Yeah.
who gets copies of what and where they go from there. So that's
Okay.
good.
So currently on the agenda for August the 7th is Condyne on the schedule to even be present.
I don't know. Again, the only thing I have is.
Nothing scheduled yet.
Right. Is an email from Mark wanting to be on, but he wanted to come in tonight. I got the email, and I think he sent it yesterday.
Yeah.
So I
I think,
can't put him on in terms of 48-hour notice on the agenda.
I think formal notice aside, wouldn't necessarily be opposed to having him come in and talk about what they've done so far, and even if makes sense to invite conservation to our meeting, then
Yeah,
maybe that's how we do that. But
I absolutely agree in terms of having him, as long as there are no notice steps that have to be met.
Right.
Have him come in and, maybe outline what his expectations are, so at least we know, in the absence of staff that handles that on a day-to-day basis, what steps have to be taken.
And he wants the permit for October?
they said in their public filing that they're, I forget if it was hoping or expecting to begin construction on the site in September.
That doesn't leave much time.
Yeah.
Well, that their hopes may not end up being reality, but that is what they filed.
The notice on their final environmental impact report references comments must be submitted by, on or before August 10th.
That's
That's on the
comments from.
EIR?
Yeah, so I'm not sure they're going to be ready for a final plan
Buried
put to us
in
before.
page like 50 or something, it says they wanted to start construction in September.
Okay.
Yeah. They changed some of the building sizes and some other things as well. So.
Again, that's it for, if you will, by way of background. I will come in tomorrow and try to catch up with Carol and get a better sense of where we're at and where we need to be. In all due honesty, I've been a little walking on eggshells since I've got an item tonight. I never spoke to Tabitha about it. If you recall, she had it on the agenda at the last meeting, and I asked it to be deferred till tonight, and I'll explain why tonight. So there's been no communication, and I didn't want to come in and speak to Carol in advance of tonight, so for fear that it's been a very awkward arrangement without a full-time staff person that would act as a buffer. So with that said, I am going to step aside since I'm on the family's on the agenda.
And just before we start, because it's broken down into two items, the A&R and then public hearing.
Yep.
Just from a procedural question, I just want to make sure we handle the first item before moving to the public hearing, so.
Well,
Or if it's tied together, they're listed separately, so I was curious as to,
again, and that's part of the reason, and if you don't mind, I'm going to just
Yeah.
recuse myself and
Okay.
and address you from the, it's weird, but forgive me.
Sir, name and address for the record, please.
Joe Fernandez, 455 South Worcester Street.
Thank you.
Although the A and R is first, unless Rachel has a different thought on it, I would just soon do the special permit first, because frankly, if the special permit, for whatever reason, is denied, it changes how we would approach the A and R.
Okay. I don't,
Past the
I don't-
posted time for the.
Well, I
Yeah, I mean,
didn't want to carve out that parcel.
yeah, we can certainly do that. So, I mean, let's see, the time is 7:31, so we can open up the public hearing for the South Worcester Street with the Fernandez family.
Hi, so my name is Rachel Smith. I'm from Otis Dyer's office. I'm representing the Fernandez family tonight. Some of this board may have seen Otis Dyer Jr. on a number of occasions presenting Form As. Over the years, the Fernandez have occasionally broken off a lot for a family member, and this is what's going on again. Joe's son Matt would like to build a house for his family on the family farm, so we're looking at dividing off another lot. Because of their wetland issues that are close to the road, the house site will have to be up behind the wetland. And taking into account, trying to look towards the future, that there's possibly a couple of other family members who may want homes at one point or another. The idea is to have a common driveway for up to 3 houses. And that way, the driveway could come up around the wetlands to the back without trying to make individual driveways go through the wetlands. So there would be less impact on the wetlands, which isn't really your jurisdiction, I understand, but the idea is to be more environmentally friendly and just have one driveway come around the wetlands. So there are potentially 3 future lots. At the moment, we're only going to be talking about 1 lot. But the reason for the parcel A is just to have an area that encompasses the common drive should it ever be built. That way, that area that the common drive could potentially be built on would just be under the control of one person, and the rest of the land would be separate. And it's possible the other lots may never get built, nobody really knows. At the moment, we're just looking at the 1 lot, which is what's going to come up on the Form A. But we want to get a common drive approved should in the future they want to split off 1 or 2 other lots for the family members. It would be no more than 3 total at the most in the future.
Okay, so looking at the plan, I mean, it clearly defines Lot 1, Parcel A, Lot 2. In terms of a common drive, I see a gravel drive noted, that kind of outs,
Yeah, that's the Form A plan.
That looks like the Form A.
That's the Form A plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
There should be another plan. for the
okay,
common
if there's
drive.
something else, yeah, I don't see that on mine, so.
I mean, I can easily bring this one over, if I like this one more closely.
Well, we'll see if we have anything on
Yeah, I
these.
think it's all the same.
Are those all the same?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if
I know we
it
had
shows
provided
on
them
the,
with,
yeah, if it,
provided sort of a reduced copy that.
Looks like it has 2 engineer staffs.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be our giveaway.
Right,
Stamp.
if you see one with 2
Yep.
Yeah. No, these are all copies of the
I
same.
think all the full-size Form A. The special permit was required of the June copy.
so it looks like we have,
Right, so there's a common drive, I don't know how well you can see. The common drive would come in here along the boundary line and then across through the central lot 1 into what we're at the moment calling a non-buildable parcel A. And it would end at the edge of parcel A. So that the only lot really being created when we get to the Form A would be the lot 1. Parcel A would just encompass the remainder of the common drive, should that ever get built in the future.
I'll ask you just to turn it a little more
Yep.
this way, just so
Yep.
folks watching there and also the TV audience might be able to see that. Can you just describe the point on the drawing again?
Right, so the common drive would come along here, right here. There would be one house site here, this would be lot one, there would be one house up in the back. There's all the wetlands in the front, so we don't want to disturb those. In the future, this parcel A could have some frontage added to it so that it would be a buildable lot. And then we could possibly have one additional lot at the end of the common drive, so that the common drive could potentially serve a total of 3 lots in the future. At the moment, they're not planning to build the whole thing. We don't know whether it would ever even be built. It's just in case other family members want a lot in the future. At the moment, there's just one house that's likely to be built.
Now, currently there's a gravel road to the left of that?
That is an old, yeah, that's an old farm road that goes out back. It goes through a very wet area. It's narrow and goes through a very wet area there between a couple of potential vernal pools.
Okay.
In theory, it could circle around to here, but it wouldn't be a very good way.
Right.
It wouldn't be very practical to run utilities in there or
Gotcha.
to get in that way.
Okay.
Question just in terms of parcel A, so, at the moment, parcel A would still be included as part of lot 2, or,
No, it would be broken off into a separate parcel. It is non-buildable, it's labeled as non-buildable.
Okay.
It could possibly belong to the person who builds the house, but now, just so it'd be under his control, in case anything ever gets built in the future. That's kind of
Okay.
to be determined, but it would just definitely be a non-buildable parcel, with no frontage at the moment.
okay.
How many butters are there?
Not very many, because it's mostly surrounded by Fernandez.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 5. I know they did a certified notification.
Oh, so
Or
they've
at
been,
least we took care of the certified abutters list and the labels, we provided them all to Tabitha.
so legally they've been received information, they've been
They
told.
should have gotten a certified mailing through the.
Perfect,
through,
perfect.
Norton should have handled it.
Very good.
I guess everything's labeled potential vernal pool. Have those boundaries been established?
They haven't actually been certified. So, I mean, they have a lot of the features of a vernal pool, but they have not been certified as of yet, but we still want to keep away from them, assuming, that they probably are. So it's better just to not disturb the wetlands, because the only other way to really get lots back here would be there's a narrow spot there, you'd have to fill in a little bit of wetlands to get through it, which you're allowed to do under a lot of DEP regulations, but, it's much better if we can go around the wetlands and not disturb them.
Absolutely.
Orange, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was only able to look at this really small plan, and I couldn't make out much of it. If you could walk us through, the bylaws have a definition for common driveway with a bunch of criteria. Could you walk us through those and just say how you've met them in terms of what you're required
I
to
don't have the
do?
list in front of me, but I do recall, one is it has to have an 18-foot wide cleared width, but 12 feet of that has to be gravel. We do show that on the plan.
Do you know how long? It's supposed to be 500 feet. I know you're asking
Yeah, what's the
for-
total length of
Right,
the
total
plan?
length is 737 feet. And I believe it says it can be longer if it has a turnaround sufficient for the,
From the street point to where any principal, it's actually supposed to go to where the principal building is proposed, not to exceed 500, so that might be closer if it's going to the principal building. You have a proposed house?
right, at the moment, that is the only building that's proposed. There is something in the bylaw, I believe, about, it can be longer if it's okay with the emergency services and if there's sufficient room to turn around a vehicle. So if it ever did get built, we have a proposed cul-de-sac area at the end that would be big enough for an emergency vehicle to turn around in.
There's also supposed to be something about separate lots, 20 feet, landscape buffer. You have the side of that road going against the land. Is there a buffer against the initial part of that common driveway is against?
No, there's not.
There's not.
So how close is the drive to the lot line?
The proposed driveway is basically right up against the lot line to keep it away from the vernal pool.
The lot line to this side.
Right.
So which would be the lot line against M. Perry and Son Construction and Octavio, well, Octavio Maderos, I'm
Maderos,
sorry.
yes, Maderos.
Octavio and Claire
Right,
Maderos
by the time you
lot.
get back to Perry, you're way away.
Yeah,
from the,
that's, yeah, further back.
Yeah, but it talks about, shall be separated from other lots to which access is not being provided by an appropriate landscape buffer area of at least 20 feet in width. Is that possible in there? Or-
No,
they
to
couldn't-
shift it over the 20 feet really pushes it closer to the wetlands.
Mm.
That was the concern.
Is it to the lot or to the house?
Lot.
Lot. Is there a house currently there, or is it just an open lot?
There is a house over here.
There is, okay.
Yeah, it's over this way on the lot more.
Mhm.
Or on what page in the bylaws is it?
18 and 19?
Thank you. May as well, we're looking at the same thing.
And I guess, I mean, to the board, I haven't been on, if you exceed the 500 feet, well, actually, I don't know that you're exceeding 500 feet if you go to the house. You know what the distance to
Right,
the
that
house?
would be less than 500 feet.
So then that would call, it says to the principal building is proposed not to exceed 500 feet. So if that's less than 500
That'd be
feet,
less than 500 feet.
that may not be an issue.
Yeah, I just want to make sure
Okay.
from, can you read to me that section on the landscape buffer?
Sure, it says the common drive shall be located entirely within the boundaries of the lots to which the driveway provides access. It shall be separated from any other lots to which access is not being provided by an appropriately landscaped buffer area of at least 20 feet in width.
Yeah, so I mean, I read that, hearing that, I take that to mean that there should be a 20-foot buffer against the lot line
For the road.
for the
shouldn't be
road,
on-
so, yeah, again, I don't know dimensionally how close we are and at any given point along that lot line.
Yeah, well, we are proposing it right near the lot line because of the wetland issues. So is there any way to have some different type of screening other than the 20-foot buffer? Or does, and I apologize for not reading this over more closely before, does the planning board have the authority to?
The issue in going over is it's getting to the wetlands, is that the problem, or
Yeah,
You
there's
shift
vernal-
it to the left
There's
and
vernal
end up
pool, I
in the
mean,
pool.
the vernal?
there's physically, you could shift it over without actually being in the wetlands, but there's a lot of concern about protecting those wetlands. You know, so the Conservation Commission really doesn't want it closer to the wetlands.
The area as it stands now is heavily wooded. And
No.
the difficulty is trying to serve multiple masters. The probably overarching concern is the potential vernal pool, so it's been drawn to stay away from there. We could easily move 20 feet over, but you're now coming closer to the vernal pool, which is a concern. On the other side of the property line, it's also wooded, so there's a natural screening, but we wouldn't have an issue providing our next door neighbor with 20 feet of landscaping on their property if they're concerned about a visual block. It's just, again, trying to serve those two needs. Again, we can move it over 20 feet, but I can tell you that's going to be an issue with the Conservation Commission.
I, for one, would be totally against that. I think what you just recommended, I totally support, because by moving it 20 feet over, it really kind of jeopardizes what you're trying to accomplish here without jeopardizing those possible vernal pools.
Is there anyone in the audience representing any of the abutters or public? I'm not sure who you're with, sir.
He's my son.
Oh, okay,
He's
all right.
the-
Thank you if I missed that.
No.
Okay, welcome.
These are the ones I posted.
Yeah.
So it looks like the flag number B17 is the one that jets out the closest, right? That's kind of the tight corner that we're looking at.
17, 18. right?
Yeah, are your two kind of squeeze points right there? And then it looks like on the smaller plan we have, there's a buffer off that flag, I think, to kind of keep.
Right, there's a
Keep it-
25-foot no-touch zone.
Zone,
to begin with,
right?
They're not allowed to do anything in it all.
Yeah, okay.
And then because it's.
Because I'm trying to see how much, don't have a scale, but how much space we got to squeeze in, maybe if even,
Not a lot.
Not a lot,
Not a
but
lot.
I'm thinking instead of no buffer, if there's an opportunity for even a 10-foot buffer or half of that, maybe it would be something to discuss.
Or
Yeah, do we
curbing the
know
road
that-
around it? Curbing the
Oh,
road?
go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, the upper
yeah.
portion of that isn't really affected by the vernal pool. So if the road could start 20 feet in and maybe have to just come out closer as to bypass the vernal pool, you'll only be going for a certain number of feet as opposed to 500 feet.
Make it more of a curve
If you make the,
around.
yeah, if you were to take the curb cut and move it down and then just kind of,
Bring it in the 20 feet where you have it.
Move it to the, move the curb cut to the
Are you saying at the start of the
right or
drive?
left.
yeah.
So like, pull it in,
Curve it a
Oh,
little.
and then curve over to the.
Yeah.
boundary line?
Yep.
Move the entrance a little further away
Mm-hmm.
from the boundary line?
So that way you're not hugged right on their property line.
Forever distance, if you're, I don't know how long that would match in terms of that vernal pool area. If it's 20 feet, 10 feet, it's not 500 feet.
Yeah, we could bend that over a little more, see what Concom says about that.
Back to the fire and rescue, if you do that, though, the road still says the size where an ambulance or a fire truck can have access to get down to the,
Yeah.
that doesn't change, it still has.
Right. It has to have the 18 feet cleared width, it has to have the 12-foot gravel width, and if they actually build it as a common drive, it would have to have this turnaround.
Cul-de-sac.
I mean, at the moment, it's just gonna be a driveway to the single-family house.
Okay.
But, I mean, we could propose, do you have any opinion on that, Joe? As far as what they're suggesting is that where the driveway comes immediately off the road, we could shift that over a little bit?
No, I don't imagine that does either.
I think the issue is that the only issue I think is start cutting this over, triangulating too much, and this becomes an issue with fire department as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, you have to look at the turn radius for sure, but.
Right, you can't put much of a, well, that's,
Just to pick up 20 feet, I don't think is going to change. It'd be actually more perpendicular, again, without a scale, but you could- that shouldn't be an issue. Again, where it's quite wooded, in fact, these folks just cut some of it down. They met with Concom to put a lawn in on the side, in the back, but again, to move it wouldn't be an issue. I did, if I could, try to explain the thinking or the lack of thinking. As Rachel has pointed out, although I have two other children, each of whom have a home, three other children, each of whom have a home, one in Norton and the other two out of town. There's no indication that they are interested in building a house. Time goes by, I do have 7 grandchildren. This property was bought in '53, and it's frankly been kind of a family legacy that when I grew up, I built a house. My sister lives across the street. Someone asked about abutters. All the abutters save this one, except for a property in the back, which is, there's nothing there. It's wooded and wet. All the abutters are family members, so I think that explains the lack of an audience.
In your family, yes. In other families, maybe not.
Yeah, well, fortunately, in our family, we're still talking to one another and hope it stays that way. But the point that I would want to make, and I've tried making a couple other circumstances where it's come up, the way this is being proposed right now, nothing else can be built without coming back to you folks as the planning board with another A&R changing parcel A, straighten out that crooked boundary line over so that there's 150 feet of frontage. So that this may be it. There may never be another proposal, but by the same token, if we don't do this now, we've locked out the possibility of utilizing that back area. So that's, we could have just done an A&R, and Matt would have been on his way and, applied for his building permit after conservation. But we just wanted we didn't want to lock ourselves out of potential use. But moving over 20 feet at the beginning of it wouldn't be an issue for us. Whether it would be with the Concom, I don't know.
Any other questions, comments?
There was also, I couldn't tell, this is the grading, common drive shall not disrupt existing drainage patterns. I don't know that, I see there was some elevations there, I just couldn't make them out. Is that just?
It does show some grading, which doesn't make any huge changes, just flattens out a little bit the area.
Okay.
And we are going to, with Concom, they're requesting in one area that we put a swale right next to it just to catch any runoff it does. So even though that's not on this plan, that will be on the conservation plan, to make sure that no runoff gets down into the vernal pool.
Okay, and then, but it says the private driveway is for at least 2, but not more than 4 building lots.
Right, this would be a maximum of 3.
So, but this is for 2 building lots, so we're assuming lot 2 is a building lot? I don't know if we've
Now, at the
identified.
moment, it's actually only for one building lot, just lot 1. And then it goes through parcel A. Well, I see what you're saying, in theory, lot 2
Could be a buildable lot in the future.
A buildable lot, that's not really the intent here. I mean, lot 2 is all the remainder of the farm.
That's a different permit for a different time, so.
Right, so potentially, there could be a total of 3.
Then the lots, okay. And then, and I defer to the rest of the board, it calls for documentation relative to easements, restrictions, and maintenance of repair and liability being a common drive, and for all utilities to remain perpetually the responsibility of private parties. I don't know how you've dealt with that in the past, and because if you own everything, I don't know if you need it, I don't.
Let me say this in public. The maintenance agreement for this is all on Matt. It's going to be his driveway that's going to be utilized. When we do gift it to Matt, we'll have in the deed our ability to access through there, and perhaps at that point say that, work something out with him that, all right, you take care of it to your property, and whatever happens beyond that is someone else's responsibility. Because we have no other potential users, we've not worked a formal agreement out, other than when we do gift it over, the deed will have something that says it's a potential common driveway, and we have, a successor entitled would have access to use the extension beyond his property line, but it would be on them. In the meantime, everything's on Matt.
So
And that'd be set at lot 1, not necessarily with
Right, in other words,
parcel A, because parcel A is kind of the controlling parcel for the rest of the shared drive.
well, parcel A nothing can be done with it until it's further broken out, but.
Whoever owns that owns the extension of the common drive, so to
Right.
speak.
And that remains with you right
Right,
now, parcel A.
Parcel A, and there's 40 acres that go in the back, it's all backland without, frontage. And there's, again, no intention of developing it.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, assuming that, I think I don't have any issues with it pending conservation's approval of the driveway and going around the vernal pools, and you mentioned just the swale that they're asking for. So,
Right, conservation will have their whole set of things that they
Yeah.
require,
Yeah,
which don't really affect this in a way. It's just gonna be more things that they have to do as far as erosion control, swale, that sort of
from a procedural standpoint, I think we are the special permit granting authority as the planning board, so I think
Right.
our approval would have to be based pending conservation's approval on
Exactly.
their plans.
I think you could do it, yeah, you could probably do it either way.
Yeah.
you can approve it, I mean, even if you approve it, they can't actually build it without conservation approval.
Still has to go to Conscom.
But
Yeah.
you could also approve it subject to conservation approval, I would think.
Well, with that said, at this time, I like to make a motion to.
Well, let's, procedurally, we need to close the public hearing first,
Oh,
and then we'll act on the permit. Mr. Fernandez?
Yeah, before you do close the public
Uh-huh.
hearing. To my knowledge, I've only participated in 2 past common driveway special public hearings. And one of them was on Oak Street, and the other one was Mary Jo Estates off of East Hodges. And one of the things that you need to find, and it's section 1010 of the zoning bylaw, and I've got the minutes for both, and I'll just quickly read what was found in both cases, that according to section 10.10, the project would be sociable and economically desirable. The project will satisfy an existing need. The advantage of the project do outweigh by far any detrimental effects. That such effect on the neighborhood and environment shall not be significantly greater than could be expected from development if the special permit were denied, and the applicant has no reasonable alternative available to accomplish the purpose of the project. And finally, the specific conditions imposed hereunder would minimize the detrimental effects and protect the neighborhood. I guess, as Rachel had pointed out, the reason we're doing this is because of the wetlands. We could at least attempt to go through them. I don't see how that benefits anyone. So when we talk about meeting these criteria, we're going through this exercise so that it is a more beneficial approach than doing it more conventionally. So my point being is that when you do vote on this, if you would make reference, as was done in the past 2 common drives, that's one of the requirements of special permit.
Okay, thank you.
Just some clarification, I think 2 things were said. You said you were okay with moving it over 20 feet. Are we talking about moving it over 20 feet to the point where it conflicts with the vernal pool? Or is it you're going to try for straight 20 feet and see what the Conservation Commission says?
I would think just the first.
Just the first section, because,
Yeah, the discussion was to wrap it.
Okay, but you said-
Conservation is definitely not going to want it any closer to the vernal pool, their flag 17.
Well,
Yeah,
right now,
that's
next
what
to it
Mr.
is
Pinch
trees, right?
Right now, it's trees, right?
About how much, how far over?
Looks like about,
No, I mean on the other side, the abutter.
oh, next to the abutter?
Yeah.
There's just really a few feet, but there'd just be a few.
But on their property, is that trees right now?
Yes. Oh, on this,
Yeah.
the abutter's property is a fair amount of trees, right?
Okay, so there's, that would be my question. I mean, moving it, if they had, a lawn or something, it would be.
No, I think
You
it's
know.
all trees on
There's-
this side.
boy, I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, and I don't hold me to this, Steve. I think there's probably on their property 10 feet of just natural vegetation, a little bit of landscaping, and then their driveway. Again, we'd have no objections to and that's probably the easiest, just moving the entrance 20 feet over. And the way this lot is configured, the further you go in, the further you get away from their house, even though we're on our property.
Yeah.
So either moving the entryway over 20 feet, if that's okay with Concom, landscaping to the abutters' satisfaction.
You can maybe plant something along the boundary
Yeah,
line.
and it's,
Well, my thought process was, is it even necessary to move the entrance over if it's all trees on the other side? That's just.
It's not even a privacy issue.
Steve's saying, do you need to even move it over if it's all trees on the abutter side?
it is wooded at the entrance on the abutter side. I couldn't tell you exactly, because I frankly haven't looked at it from that perspective. But
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to say move it just to move it, is my perspective on it. I mean, I'm okay with it as is. I don't see a reason to have to move it if there's trees on the other end and nobody came in to dispute it.
Joe, may I just see a copy of those minutes?
Oh, sure.
Would you mind? I didn't bring those along with, so. Yeah.
Arts that deal with this.
Maybe you
Yeah.
can even talk to me about it, Joe, and see what they'd be happy with.
Oh, I'd have no objection doing that.
No,
I guess shifting it, I guess, puts it more in terms of the spirit of the bylaw, even though we're still not following the bylaw. I'm not sure if that necessarily what that benefit is, but I think it does serve to kind of meet that standard of, as Mr. Fernandez cited in the bylaw, kind of applicant doing what they could do to best meet whatever they could. I think that would be my
Yeah.
perspective on it, to kind of allow as much of a buffer as was possible, because as we know, lots can change hands at various points. Person moving in to that property at some point in the future could decide they hate trees, and
Yeah.
which,
Right.
so I think that would be my perspective, regardless of kind of who owns what lot at this time. That can always change in the future. So I think shifting it a little bit, if that still works in terms of what conservation is looking for, I think would be my viewpoint on things. But I'm
How far from the existing, where you want the road to be, to where B17 or the vernal pole begins, how much of a gap is there?
Right now, it looks like. Well, off B17, you have the 25-foot no-touch zone, so you definitely can't do anything in there. And then it looks like there's maybe another 20 feet over from that
But how far
no-touch
did-
zone until you get to the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, just going off of the measurement of 50.84 feet at the top of the drive from the lot line, or along the road, you know, that if you followed that lot line, you know, along there, we're, again, just estimating somewhere 55 feet, 60 feet
Coming in that
from
way.
that B17 straight, you know, perpendicular to the lot line.
Because the other issue.
You know, if you
also-
add 25
also
feet there, off of B17, you know, again, that gets you down to 25, or, well, 30 feet, thereabouts, 30, 35 feet. The width of the driveway is how?
The driveway has to be total cleared width of 18 feet.
18 feet.
But only,
Yeah.
well, only 12 feet actually gets gravel. Just
Yeah.
have to have a little wider, so in case an emergency vehicle needs to.
Well, that was my question, just to make sure you answered it. If you do that corner change, can a fire truck and ambulance make that corner?
I don't see why not, but I know what you're saying. If they're coming from this way, obviously no problem at all.
The other way?
If they're coming from this way, it'd be a little bit more of a, yeah, but even here right now, you have to come around the corner, so I think you could shift it over a little bit without any problem for an emergency vehicle.
Okay.
The one thing I did want to mention is when you get, as soon as you start to get in near this B17, 18, that area, the ground is sloping down towards the vernal pool more. So if we had to move it over in that area, that would require filling in order to move it over, so I, Concom is really not going with that. But as far as,
For what it's worth, I did speak to you about it about 3 months ago, there's no issue. I directly told them this is where it's gonna be, right in the corner, there's no issue. If you want, I can have it formalize it, it's really synthetic, I get it, 20 feet, got it, I can put it in writing,
This is the Maderos?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If you, I mean, have it talk to them, get it in writing, if not, proceed and try to move it 20 feet. If you prefer.
Joe?
The only thing I'd ask, if you want to make that a condition, if you condition it upon, move it over the 20 feet to the extent allowed by conservation. Again, we have no issue whatsoever.
I think we have the understanding that this driveway is trying to split like 4 different masters' wishes.
Yes.
So, whether that's conservation and fire and, yeah. So I think pending kind of turn radii for fire trucks and ambulance and conservation, kind of doing what we can and
How
trying
would the
to.
board feel about keeping it as is if, you know, the abutter approved it in writing.
I'd rather go, I don't mind bending to conservation, to tell you the truth. Anything you get by conservation, saying this is what we're supposed to do, tell us what we can't do, I think I'd be happy to defer to that as a reasonable accommodation in terms of what you need. And we're happy to do that. But to the extent it's not required by them, I think I'd be more comfortable staying within the confines of what the bylaws require. The other question I have is, can we go on a condition, or do we need to see a final plan to be able to approve it? I defer to the rest of the board on that.
I think,
It depends on how the board is comfortable. I mean, if you're comfortable with the condition, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could put the condition, we can put conditions along the special permit, however we state those, as long as they're reasonable and,
yeah, I think I would look to condition special permit approval based on Conservation's Commission's approval of the driveway shift, as well as fire.
Yeah, I mean,
and
place the condition,
fire
again,
emergency
up
vehicles
to,
being able to make the
20
that
feet
turn
buffer.
coming from Southwester.
yeah, I mean, up to that, 20-foot buffer, to the extent, allowed by Conservation Committee, but also ensuring proper turning radius for, emergency vehicles from both directions of Southwester.
I think it's two different conditions.
You don't want them crossing over, the lot line to make the turn, so we need to make sure that they can clear that without crossing the lot line, if that becomes an issue.
Yeah, I think it's two conditions. Yeah, just make it two separate ones. One's conservation and one's fire.
Yeah. And then, also as we've done previously, as Joe pointed out, conditions to satisfy the requirements of, bylaw section 1010.
One other item, I don't know if we have to make it a condition, is typically this is already handled, but the letters to the abutters, they haven't paid it yet because we haven't been able to find the invoices. It's an administrative thing.
Okay, say again, sorry?
I don't know if we have to make it a condition, but they still are gonna have to pay for the Sun Chronicle ad and the list to the mailing to the abutters. So I don't know if we should put that as a condition, or,
Who has,
I don't think it was, I think that's separate.
Yeah, administratively, I don't know how that part is
Because
handled.
administratively,
Or at
I
what
was
point.
trying to get that information today, but we,
Yeah.
it's chaos, so we couldn't find
when you
it.
say abutters now, you're talking about just the 5 people, or people?
Yeah, they have to get
100?
certified mailings, so,
Okay.
the cost of
Yeah.
that.
You had
plus
said
the-
that you provided the list.
Right,
So-
we got the certified abutters list, and they provided that in the 4 sets of mailing labels.
It's
So
not a
there
huge
wasn't-
amount, I
there
just wanted to
wasn't
make sure that
legal
it was on the record that it's still, it's outstanding because of a clerical issues. I don't know if that has to be part of the condition. or
Yeah, I'm
but,
not-
It
I
probably.
wouldn't, I don't know, I wouldn't think it would be, but I've never had that come up before.
Yeah,
Joe, if you have
yeah,
any
well, usually
input on that end,
I thought it was part, there was a fee that paid for it, but if not, I'm sure it'll be taken care of.
Oh, I don't think,
Sorry, say again?
I can grab a check right now.
I don't even know the amount,
The
so.
problem is, we don't know what the amount is.
Yeah, I don't know the
Yeah.
amount,
I
so.
think that's handled
yeah.
already, but I
Steve
just wanted.
tried finding what,
Yeah.
Rachel's office filed the list through from the list of butters from the assessor's office, gave that to the planning board staff is required to send out notice. I got myself 4, because we own those different parcels. And so we can, if we can't find those slips, we can easily reconstruct by getting another abutters list and multiplying that times 652, whatever the assessor's thing. And I have copies of the ad that had to run twice, and I can contact the Sun Chronicle. For the record, and I think it gets a little clumsy if you make it part of the special permit, but you can certainly, make it part of your,
Well, the reason I bring it up is because we were trying to settle this before the meeting tonight, so that it wouldn't be an issue. I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record that there was an attempt to get this handled first.
no, that's, we just don't know what that amount
Yeah,
is.
we don't have
Yeah.
to.
I kept
Okay.
a copy of the abutters list, so I mean, I can tell you how many went out.
Yeah, they all went out. There's 5, I believe, 5 or 6.
All right, I mean, I'm myself, I'm not concerned about adding that in as part of the special permit, but,
Yeah.
I mean, that's me.
I think it's been noted in the record.
Yeah, that's all I
mean,
want to
yeah.
the notices have been sent, the ads have been posted, so
Yeah.
it's just the resolution of the back end. And I agree, I don't think that needs to be part of the special permit.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Well, any other discussion before we,
I think we literally have to grant, we have to make a finding that was stated in that, basically in 10.10. We can't just reference it as a condition. And basically, as part of our decision, we would need to make that finding, that and we can read it into the record. So we can close the
Yes.
public record, but we'll need to, we can't just reference it as a condition. It's not, it's a finding. We have to find that as a condition.
all right.
A motion to close the public hearing?
Second. All right, motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Thank you, everyone, for your input and presentation this evening. All right, so before us is a request for a special permit on the South Worcester property. Any further discussion?
I think we've, the discussion, I guess, in terms of making the finding,
Is there, yeah, if you want, I could read that for the record so we know what it is.
Yeah,
Section
that's fine.
10.2 calls for us to find that the petition for exception is socially and economically desirable, that it would satisfy an existing need, and that the advantage of the proposed outweigh by far any detrimental effect, and that such effects on the neighborhood and the environment shall not be significantly greater than that to be expected from development if the permit or special permit were denied, and that the applicant has no reasonable alternative available to accomplish the purpose, and that specific conditions to minimize detrimental effects and protect the neighborhood have been imposed, and if necessary, secure a bond or otherwise. In addition, the specific,
Yeah, I think that's the end, yeah.
in addition, the specific conditions of the applicable sections of the bylaws must be met.
I think, given the condition of attempting to shift the driveway, we've made all reasonable efforts, I think, as the bylaw states, so I would find that. Procedurally, would that finding be something that we would motion?
I would agree. I think that they've, satisfied the requirements as stated.
Subject to the conditions.
Subject, yeah, right. I mean, we'd have to word that into the special permit. So if there's a motion to approve or grant the special permit with the following conditions, and then we'd have to just state out those conditions clearly, kind of recapping that that the driveway be constructed, ideally with a 20-foot landscaping buffer along the property line to the extent allowed by Conservation Committee. And again, referencing that they satisfy the requirements of section 10.10. Any other?
10.2.
Oh, I'm sorry. 10.2, is that the correct?
No, it's
10.10.
10.10.
Oh, 10.10.
10.10, yeah. 10.10.
As well as the turning radii for.
And as well as meeting
Fire emergency.
all requirements of truck turning radii for emergency vehicles coming to or from either direction of South Worcester Street.
Can I just motion on what you just said, since we're technically, besides the video, we don't have our secretary taking these notes.
Correct.
There was a second.
All right, so there's been a motion by Mr. Durant, seconded by Mr. Hornsby, to grant the special permit with the conditions as just previously stated. All in favor of granting the special permit, say aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any nays? None? No abstentions? All right, passes unanimously, granting the special permit.
We need to move to the A&R now.
Yeah.
Yes, so second piece of business is the A&R endorsement of the same property on South Worcester Street. Rachel, please.
That's what you have.
Is there a Mylar of that?
Yes.
So I can, maybe that's not.
I've already looked at it 4 times, trying to find covered all of the discussion contained that would be surrounding this A&R, unless anybody feels differently.
Just to be clear, are we, with this, are we creating two lot 1, lot 2, or lot 1, lot A, parcel A?
Yeah, so what this Form A would do, this A&R would create Lot 1, which is 2.16 acres, so it has excess acreage. It has the 150, just over the 150 feet of frontage. It has over 80,000 square feet of contiguous upland, so it has plenty of frontage, upland area, and their total area to meet all your requirements. It meets the shape factor with no problems, so that's a complete lot. So we would be creating Lot 1, and we would also be creating Parcel A, which is just a non-buildable parcel until something else, it would have to have frontage and more area added to it to make it buildable. So all you're creating is Lot 1 and Parcel A. Lot 2 is just the rest of the farm, the remaining land, so you're not actually creating anything there.
And that's the 44.003 acres.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
And to restate, parcel A is essentially just the controlling parcel for the excess of the shared driveway.
Correct.
Okay. I just had one other question. There's what was it called? Oh, a forest lien, tax lien. What does that run through, and does that affect something that needs to be referenced or not?
I can get it, do it, if you want.
No, it,
Chapter, it's either in chapter 61B or 61. That's a tax break that the state provides for people who own large parcels of land to help them be able to keep it in either agriculture or forestry by giving them a reduced cost on their taxes. If the land were to be taken out of the chapter to be sold for the development, then the landowner has to pay back some of those excess taxes to the town. However, they are allowed to give a lot to an immediate family member without any tax penalty.
There is rollback tax.
You still have to pay all that? Okay, I thought you weren't supposed to have to for a child.
So,
Sorry, I tried.
if you can convince the assessors, there is a rollback tax, but the biggest distinction between selling or giving to a family member and selling to the general public, the town has a right of first refusal. So the town could buy it if we were selling a lot for $150,000, the town could buy that. But where it's for a family member, the town does not have that right of first refusal. However, there is a rollback
That's what I was
tax.
saying, it was the first refusal. I knew there was
Yeah.
a difference for a family member.
Yeah.
Sorry, so the town doesn't get to buy the lot.
No, but we do get to give them a check for a back
There you
tax.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussions?
Seeing none, I make a motion to approve the NAR endorsement.
Well, again, there's, no approval necessarily required.
Oh.
I mean, I guess informally or documented, we,
Yeah.
okay, all right, so,
Motion to so a motion to endorse the
A&R, there you go.
endorsement. Endorsing the endorsement.
Second,
oh, all right, so
Do
Mr.
it.
Duran has made the motion to endorse the A&R, seconded by Mr. Siegel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No oppositions, no abstentions, so the motion
just a
passes
question.
unanimously
Is
and
the
is
approval of the
endorsed.
plan we're approving, is it showing the common driveway, or is it that plan?
It's just the lot.
No, it'll just show
Doesn't have anything to do with
it'll just show the lots, yeah,
Okay,
Two separate.
right,
okay.
yeah.
It's the first.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, I appreciate all
All
the
right.
time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Have the shoe.
And I believe we all will sign off on the,
That's nice. That's what-
So, little,
I guess I'll sign in the chairman's first line here.
We,
Yes, you're acting as chair.
You're actually, right?
I think there's enough lines for 6 of us, so.
We just got a couple extra signed copies to give, one for the assessors and one for the planning board.
Yeah, why don't you just pass these-
Mylar goes to the voters.
pass them back.
Yeah. So, this,
Doing the same
Steve, you
order
want us,
anyway.
how many do you need?
well, it sounds like 3, Joe?
a couple here.
Are you got some, you got some over there,
Mylar and
Steve?
3 copies.
A Mylar plus 3 copies, so a total of 4.
All right. There's 3 here. wanted to just use these. I know Steve's got a stack right there. Oh, this is like very official now. We get to sign these.
Yes, you do.
I'm going away. That's not a signed copy, right?
No.
Okay, we're gonna
Far
do
as I
that.
know.
Steve's right there?
Seeing nothing else on the agenda, I would make a motion to.
Well, we'll welcome Mr. Fernandez back to.
He likes to run his meetings, Steve, if you can't tell.
Make a motion
That's
to
a hint.
adjourn.
All right,
The motion, I wasn't actually making that motion. So.
just before we do that, any other business with anybody to discuss? Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from tonight, August 7th. The only item that we potentially will have on the agenda is discussion to some extent with Condyne regarding the Leonard Street property. With that, any other items? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Mr. Griffin has a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hornsby a second. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye? All right. Any nays? No. Okay. I think not. I've never heard a nay to adjourn a meeting, so. All right, thanks, everyone.
I'm Steve.